in our weekly reading, Pekude, which this year is a separate weekly reading, as I mentioned on a previous video, even though normally on non-leap years, when we have one Adar, Parshat Vayakhel and Pekude are read together. But this year we have an extra Shabbat. It happens once in about 20, 30 years, very rarely, that on a year when there's one Adar, we're reading Pekude as a separate Parsha. So this week we're going to read two Sifrei Torah will be taken out, just like last week, yesterday, on Shabbat, we took out two Sifrei Torah. Yesterday we read Parshat Para, which talks about the red cow that's used to purify people who had contact with the dead. So besides reading Parshat Vayakhel, the main weekly reading, we also read from a second Torah scroll that Parsha, the beginning of Parshat Chukat. And the next week we're going to read Parshat Pekude and finish the book of Shemot this way. So it's called Chazak. When people say Chazak, Chazak, we need Chazek at the end of reading, since one of the 5 books of Torah finished. And also we're going to read from the second scroll Parshat HaChodesh Hazeh, the preliminary introduction to the month of Nisan, which will start on Sunday, the day after Shabbat. So this way, every year we remind ourselves that this is the month from which we count. I already mentioned in other lessons that the Jewish people didn't have necessarily the names of the month. At least in the 5 books of Moshe, the names of the months are never mentioned. They're only counted from the month of our deliverance. So just like the days of the week didn't exist, and even today, in modern Hebrew, they call it the first day of the week, the second day of the week. There are no proper names, Mondays, Tuesdays, etc. I work as a programmer, and we have our program is translated into different languages, and we have I have a Japanese coworker that deals with foreign languages, and he was very surprised when he saw that somehow the days of the week, he doesn't know Hebrew, but he sees that it's some letter which represents the number, and then the word that means the same as Sabbath, right? Shabbat. So he couldn't understand why the names of the days of the week are like that. And I explained to him that in Judaism the most important day is Shabbat, and all the other days are counted from Shabbat. So the same way, the most important month is what we later called Nisan, the month of the spring, Aviv, Chodesh Aviv, and from that month all the months are counted. So every year we read the Shabbat before the first day of Nisan, or if it falls exactly on the first day of Nisan, then 3 Torah scrolls are taken out. So this year it falls the day before the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and we're going to read the Parsha of HaChodesh Hazeh Yelechem Rosh Chodashim. This month will be the first of your months. So that's the coming Shabbat. That's Parshat HaChodesh, and then we're going to read Haftorah from Prophet Yechezkel, who also talks about the first day of the first month. And what I wanted to say about this Parshat Pekude is a very interesting lesson, which I think is important for all of us. Our sages teach, based on this Parsha and many other places, that even people who generally have a good reputation and who are not suspected of stealing or of behaving incorrectly, they still should never give reason for people to suspect them. They should try their best to account for what they're doing. In particular, whenever it comes to tzedakah, for instance, the people who are the gabbais, what we call, the people who are appointed to distribute money, right? Whenever there is money, there is always a suspicion, and there will be some people who suspect that some money gets stolen. So you have to give account. You cannot say, well, I'm such an important rabbi, everybody knows I would never take somebody's, I hate unlawful gain, I would never take somebody else's money. Of course I distribute all the money that's given to me. The truth of the matter is, if there is a way to give accounting, it's best to do it, so that people will never think of suspecting you. And in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu did exactly that. In the beginning of Parshat Pekude, he goes through the various materials and what they were used for. Meaning, I didn't take anything. I used exactly the materials that were used, that were given in the way that they could be used. There is an interesting story in the Talmud where a certain Roman officer of some sort, I guess who was appointed over Judea, and he read our Bible, presumably in translation, or maybe he knew some Hebrew. I mean, if he was for a while the appointee to be a kind of ruler in that area when the Romans controlled us. So he saw, and what he thought was that Moshe deceived everybody. With all that, despite that Moshe gave all the accounting, he thought that everything is doubled, meaning that Moshe used only half of what he was given, and the rest he basically put into his own pockets. So the sages explained to him when he came with these words to the sages explained to him that there was a certain calculation, the way the weights and measures were in the temple, they were doubled. There was a reason why, for instance, the Adonim that Moshe made, the main usage of silver was for these bases of the Mishkan. So every Jew gave half a shekel, and this way everybody participated in the bases, in the Adonim of the Mishkan. So there were 100 such bases, and each one was 3,000 shekalim. So if each person gives half a shekel, so it comes out to 300,000. But that's only in the temple that this type of double measures were used. And that's why this Hagmon, this non-Jewish officer, suspected that Moshe took away the half of the silver. And he was told that that's because you're using a different measure that's not the same as what was used in the temple. But my point in all of this, an interesting thing to learn, and which we actually meet all the time, and that is that people a lot of times don't think that they are not knowledgeable enough to argue. If this Hagmon, this officer, would say, I'm not sure how you counted, how Moshe counted, explain to me, that would be normal and that would be respectful. Instead, he comes and says, Moshe either didn't know how to count or he deceived everybody. So he was basically a thief. Now, think about it. So millions of Jews read the Torah every year, every day. We learn, we're not stupid people, we study. And this Hagmon, this officer, thinks he knows better than everybody else. So he comes and says, you were all deceived. Moshe deceived you all. That's a kind of stupid statement. Can it be that all the Jewish people missed something that he saw right away? With elementary knowledge of Hebrew, possibly, or maybe in translation. Maybe he read the Torah in a Greek translation or something, right? The Septuagint. Like, why would he think that he knows better than everybody else? So we meet this all the time. A lot of times Orthodox Jews are asked by people, whether it's Jewish people who are not Orthodox or whether it's non-Jewish people, a lot of times they read something in the Bible and they don't ask respectfully. They think that everybody else doesn't know. They're the only ones to whom knowledge is given. We're all studying Torah here. We're all idiots. The only smart people are the ones who have some very shallow knowledge of the Torah. They actually think they understand the best. The less a person knows, the more he has opinions on. Notice that, let's say, when it comes to physics, it's much less common. There are, of course, some idiots who think that they know better than the best physicists, but that's much less common. A lot of times people do respect a physicist, and if they have some question in physics, they're not going to say, everybody's wrong, I'm right. They're going to ask. They're going to ask respectfully to a person who is a specialist. It's only when it comes to Torah, for some reason, everybody is a specialist. Everybody thinks they know. And everybody thinks that nobody understood except them. So that's, I think, the story is a good illustration of this point. Don't hurry to assume that you're the only one who understands and nobody else knows. Right? All the questions that you could possibly ask were asked already many, many times throughout our history. We're called the people of the book, and it's not for nothing we're called the people of the book. We've been learning Torah and sharpening our knowledge for generations and generations. And if you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.